This is a topic I think you have much more knowledge than me, and I'm interested to learn more. I don't know a lot about quantum computing, but I want to get some of your thoughts on it. Why is it important? How does it change things? And how should we be learning more about it? Maybe we can take each of them one at a time.
Sure, sure. The quantum computing part of it kind of goes with my interest in Gen AI, just AI in general. Both of them work off probabilities. So the probabilistic concept of quantum computing and outcomes in quantum computing and the capacity for processing large knowledge graphs quickly. That's kind of what goes hand in hand with AI and the interest in AI. Those two pair up very well to make for AGI type systems, highly intelligent outcomes based on probabilistic matrices that we're kind of looking at there. So that's kind of the relationship before. Honestly, I got more into the quantum side of it well before I was into the AI side because it's existed longer. Topics like quantum locking, interesting ability to overcome gravity using superconductors. Those kind of things have been around since well into the 80s as a child. I remember my first experience with quantum locking was in an honors class when I was a student as a child, seeing that kind of, I think we were Fernbank, I believe was where it was, where they were doing an example of it, like when I took a field trip as a kid. So it's kind of been one of those things that I've understood for a while that it was there. That was one of those things that traditional atomics and the physical model was something that in high school I was looking at. But as I transitioned into college, really the quantum level became more talked about because it was we had the technology that was we'd started getting a little bit further. They were talking about CERN at the time, and Higgs boson became a thing. So that was kind of that point to where things were generating and moving forward. And that was kind of what brought me my interest there. The first time I saw gravity didn't exist. Or exists, but gravity was not impacted by the alignment of electrons in a field. That was the part where I was first like, oh, frictionless travel. Oh, okay. I can, just kind of be weightless without any real concept of it. There's so many applications that it kind of blew my mind as to, wow, this is really how it works. As I got older, I've looked at the quantum level. The whole concept of quantum mechanics really has excited me because when we look across the world, we see a table or a tree, right? And we understand from the atomic model that that's not what's really there. But we've never understood how we go from a particle to an object that is rendered for us in our world. The things we know it as, like the computers, the trees, the true three-dimensional objects that we look at. And as I started studying quantum mechanics, that's where you get into multiverse and fourth dimensional objects and, how you end up with the shadow of a three-dimensional object is actually a two-dimensional object. The shadow of a fourth dimensional object would be three-dimensional objects. That kind of thing goes hand in hand into the way it makes it up. And that just fascinated me. It was kind of the same way I got into programming. I ran around in a BBS text-based game, playing in this game world to a point to where I became good enough that, a nice guy named Scott Martins kind of came and said, hey, do you want to see how it works? Do you want to learn some more programming? You kind of got an interest in it. And then I was teleported away to a little room called Nowhere that blew my mind. I was like, someone pulled the curtains back in the game. And all of a sudden there was all these complex processes that made this world exist. And that's kind of how I relate to quantum mechanics. That's the same concept. There's that magical admin controls behind the curtains that make up the table I'm sitting at, the monitor I'm looking at, the screens we're running across. Those relationships to our three-dimensional world, coupled with what's actually there that we seldom think about. That's the part that blew my mind where, wow, it's much bigger than you could ever imagine. It's almost like there was an interesting photo from Voyager that Neil deGrasse Tyson posted to where Voyager is near the Orion belt on the edge of our galaxy, taking a picture of Earth. Yeah. And all you see is a little blue speck the size of a pin in this sea of darkness. And that's kind of what that was with quantum mechanics, is one day you realize that, the laptop I'm looking at is far more complex. There's this sea of like magical particles you know, many of which we really struggle to understand today, that make up what we understand as reality. And that kind of impact is what was so fascinating. That was truly magic to me. That was the equivalent of magic in my mind, if there is such a thing like that. That's those forces at play were almost mystical. And then I started realizing, after learning a little bit more about how things work and the relationship of waves, that realistically we all float around in a big sea of waves, and based on the inputs that interpret those waves, we see color, we hear sound, we have taste, we have all of these reactions that are really just reading a wave. The crest and the scent of the wave makes up the perception of our reality. So that kind of brought me into the quantum realm and why that mattered and why that impacted our world, because most of the time we run around and just kind of see what we see, but it's far more complex than we could have ever imagined. And that complexity, that unachievable perfection, that unachievable admin control, that really is what fascinates me. That is the part where I'm like, oh, let's play with the control. It's taking the clock apart like I did when I was a child.
Yeah.
I'm not happy if I'm not taking it apart and understanding how it works. It doesn't matter if that's my own reality. I still want to know how it works. I still want to see what's behind the matrix.
Yes, but the weird part is if you keep taking it apart and you keep peeling the onion back, you're going to find that it's energy and wave and not something tangible.
It's not, there's nothing tangible about it. It's just it's the interpretation of sensors. That's all it is. You know, the rods and the cones in our eye determine the color. Those colors really don't exist. It's an interpretation of our brain. We get a wavelength through the eye, and our brain turns that into a color. If you have myopia, you get a different color than me.
Yeah.
That's the interesting part, you know?
Yeah, the thing is, I listened to your journey, and how you came to quantum mechanics was a very organic and a passionate one. For me, it was a little bit forced. The nature of my major in college, it forced me to learn about quantum mechanics, and I can tell you that I struggled with it in the beginning. I don't think I initially really understood what it meant until really maybe the second semester. That, like when I was taking quantum mechanics 1B or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of the course, but 1A was definitely a struggle for me because it was so weird in the sense that you're just a bunch of probabilities, right? So I don't know. It's
the randomness of it. It also there's a technological potential to it, though. It was like I was talking about the other day. We've learned now that you can take the spin of a particle, and when they're entangled, no matter how far apart they are, that spin left and right, that's binary. You put 8 of them in a row, you've now got a modem that transmits data across any amount of distance, to our knowledge anyway. We assume there's no distance quantifier on it. That's how it seems to appear to work. So if you want to rapidly communicate with, say, a satellite, Voyager, on the edge of our galaxy to get data transmission speeds instantly, in theory, entanglement is the way you would do that, because you could transmit binary using the spin of a particle, because it's going to offset the spin on the opposite side, and now you know how to transmit data. That application is huge for anything we grow on, anything we do. You now, distance is not a problem in communication. Bandwidth and speed is less of an issue now. You know, look at the rovers we've lost communication with on Mars and some of the struggles there that we've had with them. It's a 6-minute communication gap. What if it wasn't? You could drive your little RC car around on Mars without any problem, real time. I
love that you just called the rover an RC car, but that's hilarious. I'm sure
$82 million RC car. All right?
Yeah.
$82 million.
You know, tying it to kind of more practical things, right? You talk about quantum mechanics, and now tying it to kind of quantum computing. We talked about it a little bit in the past, and it was really about you teaching me what it was. Can you talk a little bit more about, quantum computing and, what it means for the field, like application and just general human advancements and what we're able to do versus what we could do before?
Sure. It definitely is an interesting. There's SDKs are out there now for programming on the quantum layer. The challenge in programming on the quantum layer today is the same challenge we're having with AI agents today and LLMs, right? Quantum mechanics is not, or quantum computing is not a true and false. It is a 93% true, 7% false answer. You still deal with that probability of nothing being 100%. The entire challenge when we look at like the Willow chips and things that they're producing today on all the chip level, the biggest challenge is error correction. How do you get the hallucinations out? The same hallucinations we deal with in LLMs also apply to quantum mechanics, because sometimes, the outcome is negative. Sometimes you don't get it right. There's a 7% chance you will fail on your answer. We're not used to dealing with that in traditional computing. In traditional computing, it is a 1 or a 0. It's not 0.97.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's what we have to deal with. That's the challenges in quantum computing and how you work with it. For things like modeling, to where a 97% chance of success is good, is acceptable, it works. For things where you need it to truly be 100%, it doesn't work as well. And until we can get that error correction up to 100%, there's just going to be applications to where 3% inaccuracy is just too much. And that's what, manufacturers like NVIDIA, Google, Microsoft, they're struggling with that it's that 80-20 rule. That last 20% of error correction seems to be very difficult at higher qubits. We get weird outcomes from it. If you look at what Willow did, they took it off the market. Hasn't really been heard from. No one said anything about it. We ask why. Was it for error correction? Was there something else going on? We don't know these things. That's where it gets weird. And unfortunately, the quantum world is weird. It's not a true and false world. Quantum computing isn't true or false. It's yes, no, and maybe.
Yeah. So you mentioned Willow thing and them taking offline, whether it's for the error correction, but the interesting thing that we talked about in the past was the crazier stuff, the crazier conspiracy theories that I'd like to hear a little bit more about where you're going with that.
Well, I mean, like if you look at some of the Reddit stories and the things that come out of there and you fact check on what happened, the way they built the matrix for error correction, right? It's just a grid. It's a 7x7 grid of pixels to determine truthfulness, right? And error correction. You look at what was on, like, the conspiracy theories and the more crazier side of it. Yeah. And you've had everything from people reporting that glyphs started appearing from fourth dimensional outcomes in their communication. Something was trying to communicate over the chips. When you play in the quantum world, we have very little understanding of it. Right? We don't know the true impact. Is it communicating in fourth dimensional space with all these other dimensions? Is that really how it's doing? Is it really making a choice across, every probable dimension that could exist? Is that really how it works? We don't know that answer. And because we don't know how it works, we just know how to manipulate it a little bit. I think it'll be many, many years before we actually know the true implications of what we're doing. We may come to find out later that we're sending out a signal through, intergalactic space to everybody that notices us, and we may not want to be noticed. I made the statement before. What is it? The quiet rabbit stays alive in the woods.
That's right.
The noisy rabbit gets eaten.
Yeah.
And that may be what we learn, is that we are the noisy rabbit. We probably should not be doing that. You look at all the other crazier side of what we deal with in the quantum world. I mean, we deal with Tic Tacs in Congress last year, right? That was the big talk. So when Google comes out and says, it could be communicating across Willow could be communicating across multiple dimensions. If you'd have asked me that 20 years ago, I'd have been completely shocked. If you asked me that this year, I'm like, makes sense. Probably could happen. I could see that.
Yeah.
The things that were crazy 20 years ago are less crazy today because science has progressed. But that's what we find in our culture, right? When Columbus decided to say the world is round and sailed away from Portugal, everyone told the man he was crazy and he was going to die in a storm.
You'll fall off the face of the earth.
Yeah, you'll fall off the face of the earth. The dragons will get you. All this kind of stuff. Guess what? He didn't fall off the face of this earth. Yeah. Here we are today, sitting on the continent that they found in that area. So, I mean, obviously, fear drives a lot of this. So, You can't fear what it is, but you do need a healthy dose of fear to understand it. There's a respect for technology, right?
Yeah.
The respect for what we do.
Yeah.
Anything in science has a checks and balance system that we work with. If you get too far of that, if you fly too close to the sun, it will melt your wings. We know this.
Yes.
Look at the people in the 1940s when we were testing the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
We sent our soldiers walking out there, our soldiers and scientists, unclothed, just walking out there at ground zero drop points, looking at the ground, picking up rocks, seeing what would happen. I'm pretty sure most of those guys died of cancer a few years later. But at the time, we did not understand that. We put asbestos in our houses because, yeah, it's a great insulator. We sprayed it all over, DDT all over our crops in our fields because, yeah, it was great for killing bugs. Then we realized it gives us cancer. We may find out some of the same things about the technologies we're working with today when we progress faster than science can catch up, right? That's the QA side of it. If you don't do the proper QA, no matter what it is, there's risks associated with it. And we're seeing that today. The willow chip is a great example of a possible risk. We don't know what it is, right?
Yeah.
So
it's just,
until we know it, of course, the conspiracy theorist and the crazy is going to happen. You're going to get the strangest of outcomes until you know the truthfulness about it.
I will say this based on what I understand about quantum computing is it's what excites me is the unknown, right? It's the possibility of what it can mean, right? You think about how fast it can make a decision, how quickly it can speed up how we think about things, because our brain doesn't process this quickly. I mean, you think about AI in terms of how it's making our lives a lot easier, how we can write our code faster, we can write our emails faster, we can pivot to different things a lot faster because of AI, because we have this assistant that can compute, just crank through things a lot faster, and quantum computing seems like an exponential version of that. And
it is, to a degree. Yeah.
And what excites me is that if we figure it out, will it allow us as a species to evolve faster than we could without it? Right?
Yes, it will help us evolve faster. It will bring about change faster. It will impact us faster. Is that evolution? I don't know. That's not truly evolution. That is technological evolution.
Yeah.
But that is not human evolution.
Yeah.
Our genetic evolution has not caught up with the challenges we're facing today, right?
Exactly.
That's
where I struggle with it, because biologically we're biological entities, and we have limitations in terms of how fast we can keep up with some of these sort of things.
I would challenge on that there is a limiter on us, but there have been people that have came about in our society that have proved those limits don't actually exist. A very fair example, we talked about quantum computers being faster than the human brain. It was Solomon Vamanoshevich, Russian guy. He was able to remember every day of his life instantly, as if photographically, and could quote it.
Yeah.
If he can do it, that means biologically any human can do it. So when you look at some of these people that are outliers and special because of either brain injury or other problems in life, they have abilities and capabilities that most of us don't have. But that doesn't mean that we potentially couldn't unlock those with technology, with other modifications. There is a limiter clearly on the human brain. We know we only use 30% of it on average. Some people have unlocked more, some people have unlocked less. That's kind of what Neuralink is doing. They're looking at ways to exploit the human brain, because in reality, biological processors are faster than transistors. What we're looking at now with LLMs and quantum computing in just that sector, we're looking at now at using cells as transistors, because they transmit data faster than traditional mechanical systems. So I would bet what we get at the end to find out is that the biological human cells are some of the fastest transistors and are actually superior to most of the computers and the compute capabilities we have today. We just don't know how to unlock that potential.
And to that end, we keep going and we end up creating
Super Saiyan, whatever it is, yes.
another species where we're the gods instead.
That is one of the more interesting parts of when you get into the crazier sides of the things you talk about, right?
Yeah.
You see the little gray men and things like that. That could have been your previous generation that did evolve off this planet. And at that point, who's to say we'll look like we do today, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you look at everything is based on energy. Who's to say that once you move up, past all of your challenges as a society and you get to that top tier society, who's to say we're going to look the same as we do today? What's the need for a physical body when you can transcend it? Do you need arms and legs to win your transcendence? Probably not.
All right. Now we're getting into like
this is where you get the crazy stuff.
Akira territory, right?
Yeah. But this is it's the interesting thing is every religion around the world generally says that when you die, you transcend to something else.
Yeah.
So it's not a foreign concept. It's only a foreign concept when you merge it into this world. You go to any church in America, that's a perfectly understood concept. You go to any church in the the Muslim or the Arabic world, perfectly understood concept.
Yeah.
Hindi and some of the those religions, more reincarnation, they still believe in you go up and come back down kind of concept. So transforming into energy to go back and become a human.
Yeah.
That's part of our society for years and has been talked about for years under the guise of religion. Yeah. So it's not like it's foreign to us.
You got a point there. We describe it as energy because that's what science describes it as, and religion describes it as a soul.
Yeah.
All religion has some concept of a soul, whether it's a one-stop shop or a reincarnation, like in Hinduism or Buddhism. It's our energy that's being passed around.
That's the only thing that travels. That is the one thing that is science and religion have in common, is that energy is the only thing that transcends death. The energy is the only thing that travels. Yeah. It's the only possible outcome we can know of. You look at this kind of stuff and it does make sense to me. I go down these rabbit holes and look at things like REM sleep. Why do we need REM sleep? Why is that? That's exactly like a database compaction algorithm. There's no difference in database maintenance. Why do you need that? Because if you don't get REM sleep, it's detrimental on your body.
Yeah.
Right? Look at things like sleep apnea that impacts people it prevents REM sleep. They have health problems, brain damage, it's a disease. It's deadly to you, right? It shortens your lifespan. So clearly it's an important process. And why? Is that where we're compacting and uploading? I don't know. That's the kind of stuff we look at. But when you look at the quantum world and the simple fact that I talk about this a lot when people, like I explained it to you before, when people go, oh, it's infinity, it's hard to understand infinity. It isn't hard to understand infinity. We understand it every day. Every time we deal with a number, we understand 0 and 1, two very simple numbers. But between 0 and 1, we understand that there's an infinite number of 0, 0.1, 0.2. There's an infinite number of probabilities and numbers there. It isn't like we don't deal with this every day and see it. We just don't recognize it and think about it.
That's true, because to your point earlier, our sensors, our eyes, our nose, our hands, our mouth, everything is a digit. It's a binary thing. Like you are Shane, you are an entity. I see you as an object as opposed to a bunch of waves or energy. But
yes,
that's in fact
not true. That's not what I am. I'm mostly water. I'm probably 72% water. I'm closer to being a lake than I am probably anything else right now. We had this conversation. I'm basically just a lake. I'm some carbon in a lake.
You're a lake, but you have emotions.
Yeah. That's that kind of stuff. You deal with that kind of stuff. And when we go back to talking about the weird things that happen through your body, I go back to the experience I had during COVID.
Yeah.
When I was sick for 2 weeks there. Like I was in bed. I didn't eat for 2 weeks, right? And for about a day and a half after that, when I walked through the house, I could smell things in another room. Like I could smell the dog walking. It was such a weird experience. For whatever reason, my sense of smell was Super Saiyan. I experienced that firsthand. I've never experienced anything like that before, but I could be up in my room at the top of the stairs and I could smell the dog walking down a flight of stairs, down the hall, down a flight of stairs, back up under into the kitchen, several hundred feet away. I could know where the dog was walking. That's why today I understand why dogs act the way they do. I had a brief one-day glimpse of what it's like to be a dog, to be able to smell things in a directional sense. And it was weird.
Oh my
it
God.
was the strangest thing in my life ever. So I don't doubt things anymore. After experiencing that, I was like, oh yeah, that was absolutely weird. Was it a byproduct of me not eating for 2 weeks and being so sick? I don't know. Was it a byproduct of the medicine I was taking for COVID? I don't know. But for a day and a half, I could smell things walking. It was crazy. It was weird. I could have told you what was in the other room and where it was moving positionally just by the smells I was getting. It was such the weird experience.
You have never told me about this. This is hilarious and fascinating.
Oh, I thought I told you about that one. Yeah, that was my COVID experience on super smell for a day. Yeah. And then it went away. Then it went back to normal and stuff. But, I couldn't, for that first day I was up, like I was wanting food. I could not really go close around food because it was so strong and such a weird, like it was almost like putting your nose over ammonia to the degree. It was so in your face and bold that it was almost upsetting to be around. And it was day and a half and went away. So I do know these things are possible. I look at people who the guy who could remember everything, a very famous guy. He could tell you, every day of the week, everything he did. He could tell you what the weather was, whether it was raining, snowing, 30 years back. Why can he do it? Why can't we all recall at that level? There's clearly a reason for it. The same particles, the same cells, the same concepts make up our bodies that make up his. Something's arranged slightly different. Somewhere a neuron is firing that doesn't fire for me. Somewhere things are connecting and circuits are connected that are not connected for us, because we're no different than, a mechanical circuit or a digital circuit. When you put electricity to the human brain, strange things happen. Go to the Mythbusters, to where, you do the Mythbusters episode where they had Tori and Grant, and they could control Tori's body just by sending an electrical signal to his brain. They could make him eat with a fork and do whatever. They played robot with him. That was 15 years ago on Mythbusters.
This is hilarious, man. I feel like, you just literally described yourself becoming an X-Men for about a day and a half. I'm just gonna, next time I see you, I'm just going to introduce you as Wolverine.
I don't have any claws or anything, but I got the beard for it. But yeah. So I mean, and I'm sure other people have had strange experiences like that, to where it's just those weird things in life, For me, it was being sick for 2 weeks and not eating anything, not being able to keep anything on my stomach for 2 weeks. That was as closest I've ever felt to dying. I swore I thought I was going to die. I went to the doctor like 3 times. They kept sending me home, saying they can't do anything for me. But yeah, it was a crazy experience that I got out of that. And, the end result of all that suffering for 2 weeks was, for a day and a half, I could smell things moving around my house. It was strange.
All right.
Weird. Very weird. Yeah.
All right.